This is Georgia Focus, a public affairs presentation of this radio station and the Georgia News Network. For the next 30 minutes, we'll feature a discussion about an issue of importance and relevance to you and your neighbors across Georgia.
Welcome to Georgia Focus. I'm John Clark on the Georgia News Network. Right from the start, Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning, also known as DECAL, is responsible for meeting the child care and early education needs of Georgia's children and their families. It administers a number of programs, including Georgia's PreK and Childcare and Parent Services programs. Today, our guest is Amy Jacobs. She is a commissioner for Right from the Start, Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning. Commissioner, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I want to learn a lot about DECAL myself today. This is your 25th anniversary, though.
This is our 25th anniversary of Georgia's PreK program. So I think the department is probably best known for Georgia's PreK program. It's kind of an interesting story. DECAL has only been around in state agency world since 2004. We were created by Governor Perdue at that point, but the Georgia PreK program has been around a lot longer. So we are celebrating our 25th year, and as everyone probably knows, Governor Zell Miller, this was his part of his legacy to start not only the lottery but also fund through those lottery funds, the Hope Scholarship and Grant program, but also Georgia's PreK program. That, I'm happy to say, is in its 25th year, and we are in 159 counties. So we serve about 80,000 4-year-olds every year. That's about 60% of the 4-year-olds. We're in each of the counties, and we have a really interesting public-private partnership to serve those 80,000 students. So we have about 50% of our classrooms are in public schools, and then we have 50% that are in private child care centers. So that gives parents a choice of what works for their schedule, what works for the location, what they want. So we've had great success with that program over the 25 years, and we've come a long way since the early 90s when it started with 750 children. And at that point, it was small. They wanted to start small just to see how the lottery was going to actually work out, and it ended up being successful. So we've been able to ramp up since then. And
talk about the sort of the evolution. How did you go from just being Georgia's PreK into DECAL? Talk about that progress?
Well, we also do all licensing for child care in Georgia. So any child care center you see or any family child care learning home, there are about 5,000 total. So we license all of those. Okay. So that licensing function was at the Department of Human Resources at that point, which is now DHS. We had the Office of School Readiness, which was part of the Department of Education. And so we had a lot of functions that were spread across a lot of different agencies. So for efficiency and effectiveness purposes, Governor Perdue made DECAL its own agency in 2004.
So it makes things sort of streamlined.
Yes, absolutely.
Much. What's the secret to your success?
I think early learning is important for everyone, and I think there's a lot of media attention around and national attention and research around the importance of early learning. But I think what makes us successful at DECAL is the people. I have an amazing team of all levels of staff, from child care consultants to PreK consultants to deputy commissioners and chief legal officers, and we all work very well together. And I think it's the staff that are trying to work with all these private child care centers and public schools to make sure that their teachers have the resources they need, that the parents are satisfied that they are in a setting that is safe and it's healthy. That's our responsibility with licensing. So I think, and we're always looking to what's the next step? Where do we go from there? It's not just about children being healthy and safe in a child care facility, which is absolutely our first priority, but it's about them receiving that quality early education, which we know has benefits long term.
You have a lot of moving parts. So you say you're in 159 counties, every county in Georgia. And you touched on some of the things that you're responsible for seeing. How do you keep tabs on all of that? In the private and the public? I can see the public more so, but the private ones has to be sort of a challenge in some cases.
Right, it absolutely is, and we do that through our people because we have a lot of field-based consultants. So they're located all over the state, so they can make sure that we have a reach all over the state in 159 counties. But we also have some pretty advanced systems, some IT systems that make sure that we keep everything on track. So it's easy for these private businesses, child care providers, to make sure all their information is up to date. And it's also easy for parents to access our information. So they have immediate access to anything that we do with a private child care facility that is licensed by us.
So you would be a great resource when a parent is looking to place their child in one of these facilities. So you have to. Is compliance difficult with these facilities, getting some of them to comply with what you need?
We have pretty good success as far as compliance goes, but I will tell you, I would not say it's a difficult thing. We have over 400 rules that they need to comply with.
Oh, wow.
So we have 400 child care licensing rules that they need to comply with to be in compliance with our health and safety guidelines. I would say only about 2% of them are not compliant with those rules, but we also provide a lot of technical assistance, and parents should know too that if you're a licensed childcare provider, we are actually doing an unannounced monitoring visit on that program twice a year.
Really?
So we're there twice a year making sure things are in order, and if they're not, then we take appropriate action. It could be, technical assistance working with the teachers or the director or the owner. It could be a fine if it's severe. We can take some more drastic measures depending on if there's some type of immediate danger we think for children and health and safety. We don't do those very often. So things are going fairly well, and I think it's, the people are not in the business to make money in childcare usually. They're in it for the right reasons, for health and safety of the children and for the early education aspect.
And what about on the public end of it? I know the same standards probably, but talk about it from that standpoint too, as far as compliance and so forth.
For the public schools,
yeah,
so they have a little bit. They have a little bit different because they're already overseen by their local board of education.
Okay.
But we do have PreK consultants that work with those teachers in those classrooms, and they're in there several times a year to make sure that they're continuing to adhere to the standards that we have for Georgia's PreK program.
Do the people that run the private ones, do they come out of the public sector usually and start their own?
No, not usually.
Really?
Not usually. They start in childcare. So these childcare providers are serving children as early as 6 weeks of age. And then, it's usually a need because usually when you're in a child care program, if you're a parent and you like it and you're comfortable there and you like the care your child is receiving, you want them to stay there usually until they go on to their next step, which is usually kindergarten. So it just makes sense for them to offer Georgia's PreK program.
Talk about the importance of a child to attend a PreK program, and what are some of the things they would learn there?
So the good news is Georgia's PreK program is a very high-quality program. We actually have the research to back it up. We are in the middle of a longitudinal study where we're actually following a group of PreK students from their PreK year all the way to their third grade year. And we just released the results of their first grade year. And what it tells us is that, and what we've learned over the last few years of the study is that PreK students make tremendous gains over all areas of learning during their PreK year. They are continuing to make gains in their kindergarten year. They maintain those gains in their kindergarten year. And then just recently we learned in first grade that everything they've learned and all the gains they made in all those areas of learning, they continue to outperform their peers in that area if they've attended a Georgia PreK program. So to me, that tells parents that Georgia PreK is a quality program, and it's going to prepare them for kindergarten. They're going to continue to make gains on those first grade learning domains as well. So it's a good start. Now, we would say you can start earlier than Georgia PreK because we know the child's brain, it's like a sponge when you're born. And so we see research out of Harvard that originally said an infant's brain is connecting about 700 neurons a second, and they just updated and said 1 million. And so when you expose that brain to a high-quality early learning experience, they're not only going to just be prepared for PreK, but for life. I mean, the research is pretty clear that if they're exposed to that they're much more likely to read on grade level by third grade, graduate from high school, all those indicators of success. Right. So we would say don't start at Georgia PreK, start even earlier.
Earlier than that.
Yes.
And what do they learn in there? Is there a certain curriculum, like you have to, like in school, you have to get through these certain steps?
So we have standards. They're the Georgia Early Learning and Development Standards, and they are developmentally appropriate for that age. And we actually don't just start at 4 years old. We have standards beginning at birth. So for teachers in these early learning environments to know what standards their children should be making, it just depends on the age, and they align directly with our K-12 standards. So you've got direct alignment. But in PreK, it's things like letters and numbers, and can you recognize a word, and rhyming. But it's also things about how do you get along with your peers? What happens when you might want that toy that your friend has? It's about transitioning from outside play to inside lunchtime. So they're not learning just academic things. They're learning the social emotional aspect of how to stand in line, how to raise my hand, which is important. And we hear anecdotally from kindergarten teachers, they can tell a difference from students that have attended a Georgia PreK program and a student that hasn't, because they're just better prepared for just the day in general.
And how about, I know you had the public ones, part of the public school systems, but in the private ones, if there's not a public one available, and if parents can't afford it, is there some type of scholarship program or help for them in that regard?
So Georgia's PreK program is absolutely free.
Free, okay,
yes,
good.
And it's a universal program. Okay. So what we say is if you're 4 years old and you live and sleep in Georgia, you can go to Georgia's PreK program. There's no income limit or requirement, so it's absolutely free for that school day.
I'm sure you're always trying to get more kids involved with it, because in some of the areas there probably is a greater need. Is it true in certain areas of the state?
Yeah, in some areas of the state, we serve close to 100% of the 4-year-olds. In some areas of the state, it can be 50 to 60%. So it really just depends. And a lot of it's just different in each of the 159 counties. A lot of times, it's usually a public school provider because they may not have a child care center in that area. Sometimes it's half and half. So it really just depends. We're always looking to serve more children. Right now, it's about finding the quality capacity, whether it's in a public school. A lot of times, they don't have any more space for pre-K classes, or if it's in a child care center, and a lot of times, there may not be a child care center that has additional space for a pre-K, but we're always looking to serve more children. But at this point, it's really a capacity issue.
Really? And are you at capacity now in many cases?
So yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So we're funded for about 84,000 slots
Okay.
through the state legislature, and we fill about 80,000 of them. So we've got some slots to fill. It's just finding the actual location to put them. That's a quality location.
Right. Today we're discussing Bright from the Start, Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning, also known as DECAL, and our guest is Amy Jacobs. She is a commissioner of Bright from the Start. I'll talk about some of your programs specifically that you have. Let's go through what you do provide. Like, for example, your child and adult food care program and your summer feeding program and things like that. Go into some detail on some of those programs.
So we do administer the child and adult food care program and the summer food program, which is a USDA program. So it's a federal program that we administer. But that allows us to work with child care providers, and it's even an adult program. So any type of adult daycare. There are not as many of those, obviously, throughout the state. We focus on the child, but we're able to work with those programs, and depending on their population, it's usually focused towards a low-income population. We actually reimburse them for meals. So that's giving them a breakfast, lunch, and a couple snacks during the day for those children in that care. And I want to say last year we were able to reimburse for over 80 million meals through the child and adult food care program. The summer food program is a little bit newer. It's been around for several years at DECAL. But what we hear is, especially elementary school students, especially those that are on free and reduced lunch, they've got access to meals through the public schools during the school year, but during the summer, what happens, where they don't have access to meals. So we do it in partnership with USDA. DOE, Department of Education, also has a similar program that we partner with to make sure that these, especially elementary school students, have access to some meal during the summertime when they're not in school. So we're in almost 159 counties. I believe last year we served well over 5 million meals during the summer. We'd like to serve more. We've got to get creative in some places because you got to have a sponsor that wants to do that administrative type work to serve the meals. One of my favorite things that have happened in the last few years are mobile feeding sites. So wherever the children are, wherever they're congregating in the summer, if it's a park, it's a library, it's a swimming pool, whatever it may be, if you've got a sponsor and you've got a mobile feeding automobile, you can take the meals there. The city of Atlanta actually has a really neat one. I think they call it the lunchtime locomotive, and they've taken an old school bus, they've wrapped it in this really colorful locomotive type stuff, and they serve meals, and they go to the libraries and the pools. Wherever the kids are during the summer, they go to them and they serve them nutritious, well-balanced meals. So it's important that they get those meals during the summer when school's not in session.
We've covered the summer food services program on this program before, and it literally fills a need. It really just fills a gap.
It absolutely is, and it's a need throughout our state, and we're not even, we're making progress, and we serve more meals every summer, but we continue to try to recruit sponsors so that they can help us serve those meals throughout the state.
Talk about the Head Start program. We hear a lot about that. What is that?
Sure. So Head Start is also a federally funded program, and we had the Head Start Collaboration Director actually is housed at DECAL at our offices, and she works to kind of bridge the gap and collaborate between DECAL and our licensed child care programs and Georgia's pre-K program, and then the federally funded Head Start program. So Head Start is a federal to local grant. There are about 33 grantees throughout the state, and they serve 3 and 4-year-olds. The last check, they serve between maybe 20 and 25,000 3 and 4-year-olds, and they also offer some comprehensive services, and that is an income-based program, so they do focus on low-income families. Then they offer wraparound services, so they have comprehensive health screening, mental health screening, services for the parents, maybe work services for the parents. But it's been around for 50 years, created by the federal government.
So you go from Head Start into pre-K, and you're off to a pretty good start.
Well, you would hope so. Yes, absolutely. We definitely have the research to back it up that you're off to a good start if you've attended Georgia's pre-K program. And we try to combine our resources with Head Start to serve more 3 and 4-year-olds throughout the state as well.
And when I did the introduction, I mentioned that you do the Childcare and Parent Services CAPS program.
Right.
What is that?
So that's a very important program for low-income families that are either working or in school to help them afford childcare. Because as you can imagine, if you're a working parent or you're trying to go to school to further your education or obtain some type of skill so you can get a better job and you have a child, you've got to have somewhere for them to go during the day while you do that. So that helps to subsidize the cost of childcare. We serve about 50,000 families a year on that program, and right now we are undergoing a huge transition. Just back in 2013, the program transferred from the Division of Family and Children's Services to our department, and so right now we're transferring the eligibility function, so the entire program will be part of DECAL, and we're not only just transforming the eligibility function, we're transforming the program so that there's a family support. So it's not just giving a family a certificate to find childcare, it's giving them a scholarship to start their child's education. And then we've heard throughout the state from families that receive CAPS that they need some type of support, whether it's job training or housing or food, and we're hoping to add that family support component to it, which we think is so important to help them become economically sufficient on their own and roll off of our CAPS program and no longer need us anymore.
Yeah. What about the Child Care Resource and Referral System?
So that system provides technical assistance to child care providers throughout the state. You know, as I said, there are about 5,000 of them. We can't do it all at DECAL.
Right.
And right now, one of our biggest initiatives is making sure that child care is not only healthy and safe, but they're also providing a quality early learning experience. And we do that through our quality rated system. So that gives a child care program who's gone above and beyond basic health and safety requirements. They've really gotten to that early education space, and they prove it through submissions of documentation, but also an on-site assessment. They get a 1, 2, or 3-star rating. So that shows that they've gone above and beyond. And our CCR&Rs, they're the ones that provide that technical assistance for us to get them prepared for those assessments.
Right. When a parent is choosing a facility for their child to go into for child care, what are some things they should be looking for and questions they should be asking?
You know, I think it's really important to visit the center on off hours. So don't go when they're expecting you or when they think they're scheduling their tours. Absolutely go into the classroom and talk to the teachers that would be taking care of your child. Look at the child-to-student ratios. I think that's the teacher-to-student ratios. I think that's very important, that they have adequate staff. And we have licensing requirements, but if they can go lower than our licensing requirements, especially in the younger ages, I think that's very important. Make sure their facilities are in good working condition. You know, ask about background checks and things like that. But also ask about their curriculum and what they're teaching. You want to make sure it's developmentally appropriate, because we live in what I would say a very competitive society, and you think your child should be reading by 4 years old. Well, that's okay if they're not reading. They probably shouldn't be reading by 4 years old. They need to be learning those skills that will get them ready to do that when they enter elementary school.
Right. As far as you mentioned 400 rules they have to abide by. What are the basic requirements for a teacher? And is there training available for them through you?
So if you're a lead teacher, you have to have a CDA, which is a Child Development Associate degree. We made that change a few years ago. Other than that, you've got to have a high school diploma, and you need to pass a national background check. But yes, the Technical College System of Georgia actually does a lot of teacher training for this early learning space, and they educate a lot of our early childhood teachers. Most of the time, our Georgia Pre-K teachers are certified teachers, so they've been to a 4-year school, and they're certified by the Professional Standards Commission.
Is there a need for teachers still?
There is. You know, there's this ongoing discussion about professionalizing the workforce of early childhood, because for the longest time they've just been considered maybe caretakers, and they are. There's absolutely an important part of taking care of that small child and providing that nurturing environment, but they're also educators, and so we're trying to change the way we talk about that, because they truly are teaching your child what they need to get ready for the next step.
Yeah. You know, we talk on this show about, we have in the last, this year, about workforce development. And, you know, we talk about that and how they've expanded in that Technical College System of Georgia, college and career academies. This is on the front end of that, really, in some ways.
Right.
You get kids prepared to learn all the way up the ladder, don't you?
Right. And I would say that childcare in general is absolutely a two-part strategy to workforce development. It's not only educating our future workforce, but it's supporting our current workforce, because it allows parents to go to work.
Yeah, true.
We actually did an economic impact study of childcare a couple of years ago, and it shows that it's a $4.7 billion industry, and it employs about 67,000 people a year. But it also tells us that it allows parents to go to work and make over $500 million a year. So So it's definitely supporting the workforce, and I think as you think about bringing business into Georgia, you got to have quality child care there to support their children.
And the cost of child care can be really a burden too.
It
so
is.
You're helping out with that. Of course.
It is. Yeah, child care is absolutely expensive, especially quality child care, and we hear very often how expensive it is. You know, our CAPS program, our Child and Parent Services program, helps us subsidize that for low-income families, which is a big deal. And we focus and we give more money to you if you're going to choose a quality-rated program, because we know we've assessed it, we know the quality's there, and we know there's a better outcome for your child. Yeah. But then you got Georgia's PreK program, which we're so fortunate to fund through the lottery dollars, so it's completely free.
Right. You also had an announcement that 4 Georgia children from across the state were awarded $1,529 for their Path to College 529 plans. Talk about that.
Right. So we partnered with Georgia Student Finance Commission in their 529 plan, which is the college savings plan. And it was a great idea by 529 to partner with us, because we have access to 337,000 young children and their families who should be saving for college. And so we sent out notices and they did drawings so that if they won the drawing, the family received a deposit into their 529 account so they could start saving for college. And then the actual child care provider, I think, got about $529 as well to help support their program. So it's a unique partnership, but it makes a lot of sense given what we're both doing.
Yeah. And now's the time to start.
Absolutely. You got to start early. College is very expensive. I know you've got the challenge of paying for childcare, but you got to start thinking long term.
Absolutely. And recently, people have seen you and heard you all over radio and TV with your Look Again campaign too, and I want to touch on that. That is become so critical, and especially in our state of Georgia, where we had some bad situations. Talk about that program, if you would.
So we started our Look Again campaign as a result, unfortunately, of a death in a child care center. A little girl, Jasmine Green, was left on a van down in South Georgia several years ago. And, of course, that broke our hearts, and that started our campaign. And we've since strengthened our transportation rules for child care centers. And as a result, we haven't seen as many incidences and we haven't seen any deaths, thank goodness. But unfortunately, the general public, we continue to see it as a general public. So it's moved from just a Look Again campaign for child care providers, but now it's just to the general public and anybody that's caring for their child, whether it's a parent or a grandparent or a relative. I think maybe people take for granted that it's not going to happen to them, but we just want to remind everybody over and over again, don't leave your child in a car even for a second. It gets so hot here in Georgia. You've got to make sure that you don't leave your child. Don't take that chance. Even when the windows roll down.
Right. What are the requirements for a child care provider? Do they have a certain protocol?
They do. They have a checklist of children that get on the vehicle. They have a checklist when they get off the vehicle, and they have to do a second check. So if they follow our rules, there's no reason that a child should be left on a child care vehicle.
And you're seeing results from that?
We actually have. Yeah, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but that number continues to decline every year.
Good.
Absolutely.
Good.
And no deaths, thank goodness.
Yeah, exactly.
In child care.
So your campaign is paying off, and I know the governor and Mrs. Deal, they were at your press conference, and they're really supportive of this program.
They are big supporters of us, and they will continue to do that.
Well, Mrs. Deal is a former school teacher, so she's all about things like that.
She is. She's all about taking care of the children and reading to the children. And she's just been out this week. I just saw her this morning, and she was out in North Georgia. I think she read to 4 or 5 schools yesterday. So she's a busy lady.
Yes, she is. She reads a lot.
Yes, she does. Yes, she does.
She sure does. How are these services available to people? Where do they go, and what steps should they take to access your service?
So if a parent is looking for childcare, they have 2 options. We actually have a website that is qualityrated.org, where they can search for childcare in their area, Georgia's PreK programs in their area. They can look at it on their route to work. And they can look and see if they're quality rated 1, 2, or 3 star. If they need some additional assistance and want to talk to someone, we actually have a call center. It's 1-877-ALL-GA-KIDS, and they can actually talk to a person. If they have special needs, if they need certain hours, if they're looking for a special circumstance, maybe they have a child with a disability, and so they need a special type of program, they can actually talk to a child care expert to help them find a location that would be a good fit for their family. They can also visit our website at decal.ga.gov and access our CAPS program, and we're able to talk to them if they're eligible for our CAPS program to help them pay for child care.
And you touch on this, children with special needs. There are certain child care providers that specialize in that.
Well, unfortunately there aren't that many, but we do have some specialists at our office that work with programs to help work, especially with children with challenging behaviors. Yeah. Children are they're young and they're rambunctious, and sometimes teachers just need a little bit of support to help include those children in the classroom. Yeah. So we're doing everything we can to work with teachers and providers to make sure that children that have any type of needs have a place to go.
So it certainly sounds like if somebody, and parents always, I guess, are asking, how do I start? And you guys certainly have a lot of the answers for them.
That is absolutely where I would start. And we're also, on social media and on Facebook and all social media avenues. So that's definitely a place to follow us.
Great. Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure.
Thank
you so
very
much. And I've learned a lot today that I didn't know about DECAL.
Well, good. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being here. And you can find out more about DECAL, the Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning, at decal.ga.gov. And I want to thank Amy Jacobs. She is a commissioner of Bright from the Start, Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning. I want to thank her for coming in today and being our guest. And as always, I want to thank you for listening. And I'll talk to you next week here on Georgia Focus.
You've been listening to Georgia Focus, a public affairs presentation of this station and the Georgia News Network. The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of the staff, management, or ownership of this station or the Georgia News Network. If you have comments or questions about Georgia Focus, contact John Clark at the Georgia News Network at 1-800-776-4638 or email johnclark@georgianewsnetwork.com. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening.